Today we're going to be taking a look at the Ballast watch's Trafalgar. Now this newly updated Trafalgar is actually based off of an older quartz model that they had made. Now with so many significant improvements, I personally would have opted for a different model name because right now a Google search is going to confuse the hell out of you. You're going to find Amazon or reviews or other listings elsewhere, maybe even eBay, that have the Ballast Trafalgar, and it's a wildly different watch and not nearly as complex as the one that you're seeing here. This is going to be an automatic, but an automatic that's a little bit different, and that's really the reason for doing this review. The reason for that is their patented bezel control feature, which means that you use the bezel to both wind the watch and change the settings of the date and the time. I know that sounds weird, and I know that you're looking at the canteen expecting a crown under there, and it's not making a lot of sense. So I was very careful to make sure that the watch was not running because I wanted you to see it as it gets kick-started. So we take the bezel and we turn it counterclockwise, and I'm actually winding up the movement inside. I know it's crazy as hell, and it's going to take you a second to wrap your mind around it because we really don't see things like this. If you go back probably about 10, oh God, it maybe even be 12 years by now, Ulysses Nardine made a watch called the Freak, and that was, I forget if it was wound by the crown or the case back. It was wound by the crown. So that was the first time I had ever seen anything like that, and honestly, I've never seen another watch that did it. There may be others that exist, I've just never seen it. And that's going to require a great degree of modification to the movement. Now the other features, I don't really think they have to modify the movement. They're just running a gear system inside to where the stem of the movement would actually be going in. But I'm not going to pontificate on that because there could be a lot of things going on that I just don't know. I have not taken the watch apart to see that. So we've wound the watch, we see that it's running, and we didn't manipulate a crown. Pretty friggin' cool. Now, keep in mind, it's an automatic, so as long as you're wearing the watch, you're not really ever going to have to worry about winding it. So the benefits of having a bezel wound movement or a bezel controlled movement typically are going to be maybe you're wearing gloves, you're for whatever reason cold weather, or you're on some secret mission or something and you're wearing a uniform that requires gloves, and it may be difficult to manipulate a crown. This would be really great if you could wind it and make all the settings without having to access anything else. And we'll get to that in a moment. So I think the convenience of having this mechanism is kind of blown by having to open up this canteen. Now, there are listings on the web, there are video reviews and written reviews, even though this is a brand new watch. Basically just released to the public about a month ago, sometime in June, but as far back as I see maybe December or so of last year, they were setting some of these out for reviews. Now, the problem is, everyone seems to have incorrect specifications on this, so I want to kind of set the record straight for you. The size they all seem to have right, it's 46.5 millimeter case, will be larger with the canteen, and it's just under 15 millimeters in height. It's about 14.5 millimeters in thickness, so it's got a good size to it. For the U.S. market, this is more or less considered a medium size range in a sporty watch, but it's still a big watch. I want you to keep that in mind. 46.5 millimeters, not a tiny watch. You got a 22 millimeter lug, 4 millimeter thick, genuine leather strap with the quick release pins, so you can very quickly pop this off of here without a tool and change out your straps. I like that feature. That's a really, really great feature. Now, everywhere that I've seen it listed for sale and in reviews, lists it as a hand-wound mechanical movement. It's not. As you see, it is a mechanical automatic. So it's not a hand-wound mechanical. That would mean you can only wind it by the crown, or in this case the bezel, and that it doesn't self-wind. This does. This is a Miyota 8215 automatic running at 21,600 vibrations per hour. Now, I also keep seeing reports of the power reserve being 50 hours or over 50 hours when it's fully wound. That's just not possible. An 8215 runs approximate 36 to 40 hours. That's it. Unless they've changed out the barrel, which changes out the mainspring, and done something to make this movement run more efficiently, and I don't see them doing that in this price range, that's it. So don't expect more than 36 to 40 hours. Also, another really weird thing, and maybe this is a result of them possibly sending out prototypes for the original reviews. Everybody lists this as a double-domed sapphire crystal with AR coating, and it's absolutely not. Number one, it is completely flat. So you've got a flat crystal, not a double-dome crystal, and that's a very obvious difference. Also, it's a mineral crystal with a possible sapphire coating. Now, I say that because Ballast's own website kind of has, well, confusing, funky wording. What they actually say is flat mineral with hardness coating. Now, it could just mean it's a hardened mineral crystal, because that's just what a mineral crystal is. Or they may have added a layer of sapphire coating to it. I don't know which that is. So again, not sapphire and not double-domed. Now, the retail price is $4.99. In some ways, I look at this as right on. I could see spending that because of the unique nature of this watch. But as we get a little bit deeper into it, we're going to start questioning that $500 price. One of the things that I really, really dig about this watch, right here, the motto of the Royal Navy Submarine Service, put onto a custom plate, screwed onto the side of the case. Now, some people are going to love that, some people are going to hate it. I think it's cool as hell. It looks good, it's classy, and it really speaks to the design nature that Ballast went through for this. They themed this after submarines and submarine things. You have to apologize. I have to apologize. I've never been on a submarine, so I can't tell you about any of that kind of stuff. What I can tell you about, though, are the details of the watch. We take a look here, and we've got a sandwich-style dial. And I really want to just call it a multi-level dial, because the whole dial is not done in a sandwich nature. You'll see right there where the Ballast logo is, and each of the large stick figure hour markers. That's done through the cutouts and displayed beneath with the lume. Then you have applied 12, applied 6, raised up above. And then you have this nice texture. See if I can get the light in there. Really nice texture in the skeletonized pockets going around that outer chapter. Then, of course, you have the skeletonization there cut away so that you can see most of the calendar disc. Right now, the calendar is being obscured by the minute hand, but we'll open that up here in a minute, and we'll move the hand out of the way. I do like the additional decoration they've put there around the calendar aperture. Very cool, very slick. A lot of nice details. I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of cool details. Let's take a look, if we can, and see what we got going on for lume here. So I'm going to kind of charge this up a little bit. And we're going to go ahead and cut the lights and see what we shall see. Now here's the interesting part. When it's under a fresh charge like I just did, it is bright. As you see already, it's fading and fading and fading. This is not superluminova. It's a basic standard luminescence that I feel is going to be adequate, but not particularly wow. It's not going to be very long lasting, so do keep that in mind. Now let's talk about some of the details here. The dial tension ring, that's what the area that is between the case and the dial itself. Now if you really look at it, it looks stamped. And this is like this gear pattern they're putting in here, again, to give you that submarine look and feel. The problem is, it's just stamped. It should have been milled. If it would have been milled, it would have had a much crisper and richer look to it. and I think it would have added a lot to the overall value of the watch to the wearer. It's just not refined enough. And if it's a major design platform, which it is, it needs to be as nicely made and refined as it possibly can be. Now, that takes me to the mechanism. Let's talk about that for a minute here. So I mentioned earlier, this would be a great convenience feature to be able to wind and also make your settings based solely off the bezel. You do use the bezel, but you have to. If you want to change the date or the time, you have to open up this canteen. So now, the limitations of dexterity, which are the reasons why you would have this type of bezel, are out the window. Now, if you were wearing gloves, you got to take the gloves off because now you've got to open up this canteen. And here's what you do. You have two little things going on here. You have a pusher, which I think they call the setting button or something like that. And then you have this little flat pusher. It kind of looks like a helium escape valve, but it's not. And what you do is you push the pusher in. It has two stages. There's a halfway and an all the way. And then you push the plunger back in. We're just going to call that a plunger. So let's go ahead and push this partially. And now I can advance the date. So the first click, just like using a crown, if you're popping a crown out, first click is the calendar. The next click allows me to change the time. Now, this is a little bit dangerous because I see it very easy for somebody to go backwards with this, which obviously you never want to run a mechanical movement in a counterclockwise fashion, unless it's a movement that was custom made specifically to perform that function. The other thing I don't like, and it's the same reason I'm not crazy about that tension ring, is it's not refined. It's not smooth. Rather, it's toothy, it's jittery, and it's not as accurate as you would expect. It's very easy to get this thing to go and make big sweeping movements. You'll kind of feel like a crunch or a grind to it, and that's fine because it's not overly lubricated gears, but if you're trying to be precise, and I want to set this to, what is that, 11 o'clock? If I want to set it to, excuse me, 11:27, now I've got to be super careful to get that lined up. And I'm actually having to rest part of my thumb and my finger on the case because if I'm just turning the bezel, I tend to miss the spot I want to go to. And you see there's a little bit of play, a little bit of slop between the actuation of the bezel and the hand actually being manipulated. Now again, there are limitations to this movement. For me, for $500, I would have wanted a Swiss-made mechanical automatic. And because of that, everything else would have been a little bit smoother. The operation of the bezel would have been smoother. I would have liked to have seen that tension ring milled. And here's why I'm holding it up to such high expectations. Because you look at this canteen, you have a 10-piece canteen when you count in the arm, which they didn't use a cheap chain. Nicely done all the way around. The plating and finishing is beautifully done. I've been seeing claims of black IP titanium carbide finishes. I'm not even going to venture a guess on that. I'm just going to call it black IP. The other thing is that the threading on that canteen is terrible. I mean, it always feels like it's cross-threading even when it's not. It really, really, really is bad. At $500, I expect a higher level of refinement to match up to the things that they're doing, that they've done very, very, very well. One of the things I think they've done exceedingly well is this custom-made buckle. That's really nicely done. Nicely machined, punched out, skeletonized. It goes with the theme of the watch. It's not over the top. It's just really nice all the way around. That 4mm thick leather strap. This is an extremely well-made leather strap with both black and brown leather. Really, really nicely done. And this is what tells me that this watch is made in China. They don't tell you where this watch is made. I can tell you right now from the fabrication of the case, and it's a nicely made case, by the way. Nice finishing, everything else. This was 100% definitely made in China, using a good, solid, but not exotic movement, and skimping a little bit on the finer details. Now, does that mean it's a bad watch? Absolutely not. If you look at the sales history of the other Ballast watches, they've all been discounted on discount websites. That's a little bit too tight. So I would expect to see this watch for probably a good $150, $200 less. There's that 46.5 millimeters on the wrist. As I mentioned, it's not huge, but if you got kind of a girly wrist, a little smaller wrist, do keep in mind 46.5 millimeters. It's still a full-sized watch. As you can see, it's made for somebody with my wrist size because the buckle is centered. It's not over here and it's not over here. It really is nicely centered. Good length on the strap. Good quality, good feel. I've worn this for 2 days. I've enjoyed wearing this. I think it really is a fantastic overall watch. And if I could nail this down for between $300 and $350, I absolutely would recommend it. At $500, I would expect those finer details to be just a little bit better. So, since the watch is brand new, and it seems to only be sold currently through their website, and they may have some dealers, you're going to have to spend $500 to get it. I would honestly tell you to wait. I would tell you to wait till it gets around $350. And then I think you're good. I think you're golden. You got a great movement that we all know is reliable. It's a workhorse. It's got some unique features that when you go to show it to somebody, I mean, that really is cool as hell. And nobody, I don't care who you know, you don't know anybody that's wearing a watch that can be wound and the date and time set by the bezel. And that by itself makes it worth owning. Just make sure you own it at the right price.
Have it. Hopefully that gave you all the information you needed to make a conscientious decision. What you need to do is if you like the video, click subscribe. That way you're always notified when I upload a new video.